All right, welcome back to another episode of the Book Eaters Podcast. I'm April.
I'm Michele.
And I'm Iris.
And this week I threw these ladies a curveball. We had originally planned to talk about give and take with audiobooks, meaning the things that we, sometimes feel audiobooks bring to the table and sometimes just clears it right off the table like some sort of overdramatic 50s black and white film. So, should I start over?
No, you're doing great. What? No, it's great.
But I felt like we had sort of brushed upon that topic many times, both this season and last. So I wanted to tweak it just a little bit. And so what we are talking about this week is what we are calling mechanisms. But I originally was calling it mechanics, and that was not quite right because we will not be talking about punctuation or capitalization. But I based this week's drink off of thinking that we were going to call it mechanics. And so the cocktail this week is nuts and bolts. It is 2 parts whiskey, preferably bourbon, 1 part amaretto, 1 part the maraschino liqueur, and 1 part lemon juice. Stirred together, poured over ice, or shaken and strained and served up. And what do you ladies think?
So, first of all, I want to say that this whole preference for bourbon nonsense was not mentioned in the original drink recipe. It said whiskey. And I think whiskey is whiskey and bourbon is bourbon. So if you wanted us to use bourbon, you should have said bourbon. So I used CNC.
Well, the idea was that I didn't want anybody to have to go out and purchase more alcohol. I was trying to use things we already had. And I didn't want to specify a whiskey because I'd hate for you to go out and buy a bottle of bourbon if you had, I was thinking Crown or Seagram 7. I didn't know you'd have Canadian. I don't know. I don't think I've even
There's
ever had
nothing wrong with CNC. CNC is a perfectly good mixing whiskey, and it's delicious. So
I've never had it. I don't know.
I feel like you need to keep it down a little briefly, okay? It's fine.
I just don't think Canadians are known for their whiskeys.
Okay, first of all, you're wrong. Crown Royal is an amazing whiskey, and I think that's made in Canada, right? Crown Royal?
Yeah, it is. And, Canadian Mist.
Yeah, exactly. Take it down. It's fine.
Okay. All right. So, mechanisms. Let's start off by sort of talking about more of the give and take things. So what are some things that you can find in the book, like the hard copy, that you can't really appreciate as fully with an audiobook?
So clearly maps.
Yes, which we have talked about many times.
Also, like Gideon the Ninth, at the beginning of the book, there's a list of the, generations, like this person begat this person, whatever, and you really can't understand any of that in the audio version. Like
family tree.
Like a family tree kind of thing that happens at the beginning of the Gideon the Ninth. And I feel like if I had grasped that better, then I would have enjoyed the book immensely more. And the folks that read the book, I talked with other people about this book, and the folks that had read the book seemed to have a better grasp on what was going on than the folks that listened to the book because of that beginning sequence where it talks about the generation. So I think in that case, when you have like a family tree or something that looks best in like a diagram, like those are better in books than they are in audio.
Like for me, when I read a lot of science fiction, or if they really go into a world that has their own dictionary, a vocabulary, then they have like the dictionary in the back that says, okay, this, when you see this term, this is what it means.
Oh, like a little glossary?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is hellish to listen to, I'm just going to say, because
Have you ever listened to an audiobook where they read the glossary?
Yes. Chris Pell, the guy that wrote the Paolini, his book at the end, she literally goes through and reads like the whole thing. And it is, I listen to it, but it's because, that is my way to the very end, the end of the credits. But it was a little painful. And it's at the end of the book, right? So I already figured that most of that nonsense out just from like pulling it out from the position of what's happening or things that are going on. So, yeah, that's not fun to listen to.
So, there are books with each chapter that have like a little bit of a like poetry or saying, and as you go through every chapter, you can see that it's like each verse of a poem, and when you get to the end, it's like the whole verse of the poem. It's this, and it actually then is like a synopsis of what you're reading.
Wait, you mean like it's one long poem that's broken up into verses in each chapter? I don't think I've seen that.
And so that to me would be difficult.
I've definitely heard quotes, or, you know, of course the Farseer trilogy is a great example of that, where they take little clips of like a text, and that prefaces the chapter, so you get a little bit of a hint, foreshadowing, you might say, of what's coming. And I'll tell you, I don't think that works very well in audiobooks, because it's very hard to tell what is part of the main story and what's meant to just be supplemental. So what was the book that we read recently that a lot of the story was told between the two bird keepers at the beginning of the chapter? Was that one that only I read?
The two bird keepers?
Yeah, it was genius. At the beginning, I'm pretty sure it was a fantasy book, and I didn't know I was going to be talking about it, or I would be able to reference it more easily, but it was just, I'm pretty sure it was Robin Hobb, though.
Oh.
But it was genius. Every so often, the beginning of the chapter would start with this. It was like this correspondence between these two bird keepers, that, you know, messenger birds that were going back and forth, and they lived in two different parts of, you know, two different cities, two different countries. Part of the political background was explained through these letters back and forth to each other. And so the author didn't have to take up a lot of time in the actual main storytelling, because it made sense these two bird keepers would be trading tidbits of, you know, what's going on in the world.
Why does that sound familiar now all of a sudden to me? Like,
it was
in the beginning I was like, it doesn't sound familiar, but now that you're saying that, it kind of sounds familiar.
It's definitely Robin Hobb. I'm just not sure. I think it was one of the last in the series. There were a lot of books, to be fair, so it's hard to remember which one when you're drinking. Okay.
So one of the things that you get in audiobooks that you don't get in an actual book is sometimes you get an interview with the author and the narrator. And I really feel like at the end of that gives it sort of a little flavor that you wouldn't get more information about how to pronounce things, or things that come up, or details about things that are happening in the book that you wouldn't get if you were reading it in a paperback. And also I think when you get a letter from the author at the end, so a lot of audiobooks have like a little clip at the end where the author talks about how writing the book, or things that happen in the book, or something about the book, or the process to get there, or, you know, even acknowledgments, that seems more personal, because the author will actually narrate that bit himself or herself. Whereas I don't know if it's in actual paperback books or hardback books, but I don't think that I would feel the same. I think I probably wouldn't even read it. I think I'd probably skip it. I'd be like, acknowledgments. But in the audiobook, it comes up right away, so I'm listening to it and I'm engaged, I think.
Well, and that's funny, because there's really few things that the audiobook can bring that the real book can't, that doesn't seem artificial. Like we've talked before about how I hate when there's sound effects, but I'm not opposed to some music. I just spontaneously thought of something that you do get with an audiobook that you don't get. When the book references a song, like a children's nursery rhyme, like in Name of the Wind, and or the character is singing, and you're trying to imagine like what the tune would be, because it's, you know, not a song that exists in reality,
right?
And that's very hard to do for me anyway, because I'm not you know, a songwriter. But so then to hear it in an audiobook where the narrator actually does sing it, you're like, oh, like I just got through listening to this really great series called Red Sister. And it's kind of a warrior nun, but that cheapens it. It's so much better than just, I mean, it is so good. I mean, it's the pace, it moves quickly, but it all makes sense. It doesn't feel like anything gets skipped over or shortcuts are I mean, it just, trust me, it's a really, really good book. I've only read the first one though, so I hope the rest of the series holds up, but it's so good. And in it, there's little pieces of song, and to hear the it just really brought it to life for me.
On the flip side of that, if the narrator tries to sing a song and they mention what the tune should be and they don't use the right tune, I get very, very angry and distracted.
Oh, like if they're like, to the tune of Yankee Doodle Dandy, and they're doing it to row, row, row your boat.
And they just do it horribly. Like, couldn't you have taken a minute to Google how to sing that song? And then, I don't know. I mean, obviously it's difficult. I'm not casting aspersions. It's difficult. But I hate that because it pulls me out. I'm like, no, that's not how the song goes. You could just sing it like this. And then I can't sing it in my head because they're singing it wrong, and it frustrates me.
Right. And you would think that if they knew that a part of the book was coming up where they were going to have to sing and they weren't sure how to do it, they'd phone a friend,
Or just Google the song. It's easy enough. Like, there's always a version of a song available on the internet. We live in a world where the internet is at our fingertips. Like,
that's a whole conversation in itself, because I sort of feel like that's detrimental.
Oh gosh.
So I listened to the Bobby verse.
Oh, I love the Bob verse.
So that has science fiction special effects. I thought that was cool. I enjoyed it. That one I listened. I didn't read the series.
That narrator is particularly good. That's what, Ray Porter? I love the Bobiverse, and I do like the sound effects. Sometimes it can be overwhelming, where like there are some books where they full on sound effect it like it's a motion picture, and you're like, I don't need background noise for this bit. I don't need to hear someone walking down the hall.
Right.
I don't need it. Sometimes I think that that's just me, like I'm not used to it yet. Like maybe if everyone did it, then I would get used to it, and then it would become status quo. Because have you ever watched like a film that doesn't have music in the background? Have you ever watched like student films? It's painful, hurts my soul, like breaks my heart.
It's supposed to foreshadow an emotion or bring out an emotion.
If they just played some music behind it, it would be fine. But there's no music, and it's cumbersome. And then if you listen, like every single thing that you listen to, commercials on television, TV shows, movies, there's always a background track to everything. There's always music to everything. There's never quiet moments where it's just two people talking. It's two people talking in front of background music. We learn to tune it out because we're so used to it. For audiobooks, for some reason, we aren't used to that. So we pay attention to it when it happens, especially when it's random. But I don't know. Jury's still out on that.
I thought of something else that I appreciate with the book that you don't get with an audiobook.
Okay.
And unfortunately, there's just not enough books with this in it. But I love a book with diary entries, and you see the person's handwriting. Do you remember? Everybody remembers writing notes, to their friends in school.
Yeah.
And people would write letters. Now everything is text. And I was thinking about it, like even now, and I graduated high school over 20 years ago. I can still visually see very specific people's handwriting in my mind because I saw it so often, either because we studied together or I proofread their papers or we wrote and their yearbook signings. I mean, I know you and Iris pretty well. I know a bunch of people nowadays pretty well. I couldn't pick their handwriting out to save my life.
I couldn't pick out your handwriting, but I can pick out your text messages. And when in a conversation, if there's like let's say we're in a group chat, I can tell without looking which ones are you and which ones are Iris because of the way that you phrase things and the way you say things. And when I read them in your voice. Like it sounds like you in my head, or it sounds like Iris in my head, because I know you guys so well that even though I don't recognize the handwriting, I still recognize the way that you phrase things and the way that you say things, and then it will show up. You just notice it.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it because I must punctuate everything correctly?
Well, you definitely have a need to have your mechanics correct. Like that's definitely an issue for you.
I don't know a single person except for maybe my mama who texts slower than me, because I have to fix if I forgot that apostrophe and don't, I need to go back and put that in. Anyways, we don't need to belabor this. So clearly there is give and take with an audiobook. I would venture to say though that in spite of all of the things that we give up or trade in for the audiobook, when you get a really good narrator who really inhabits the character and brings it to life, there's no finer thing.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, I would give up. I think for me the best thing about audiobooks is that they're sort of like a companion or a friend in the background. Whereas if I read the book, then that's all I have. Like, I'm not able to do anything else. I have to just read the book, and that's all I'm focusing on. With an audiobook, it can do things with me. So I feel like I would give up a lot for that. And sometimes I'm just listening to the audiobook and I'm not doing other things that I can if I want to. Like, it's not trapping me. It's not trying to control me, the audiobook. Just let me be. You know, whereas the printed word demands my attention and the audiobook earns it. That's all I'm saying.
That's a very healthy relationship. But it's different for me. I can't listen to an audiobook unless I am doing something else.
Oh.
I can't just sit and listen. If I'm going to just be sitting, I'd rather have the book. And I can't do a lot of things and listen. I can really only listen to an audiobook while I'm driving or while I'm cleaning the house. I can't do it while I am cooking or things go awry. Things go very awry.
There is one other thing that I think physical books do better than audiobooks, and that is when there's not a consistent timeline. Like, there's some books where time is not linear, right? So it jumps around. Like, we have this scene, and then we jump back to this present scene, and then there's another scene. So it's not like, I guess it's like flashbacks, but there's a lot of flashbacks, right? So it's sort of the story is being told sort of disjointed from a time perspective. It doesn't work very well from an audio perspective, because even if you tell me that we've moved back in time, I can't keep track of what story was happening, in 1984 and which story was happening in 1975 and which story was happening in 2020. Whereas if I'm reading the book, something about the visual way that it says it sets it for me. So,
and it'll say at the beginning of the chapter. So if you kind of forget, you can just flip back to the beginning of the chapter and see October 1972.
You can kind of see where you are. And a lot of times there's like a visual cue in the book that's not even words that people can say. So I feel like when it's disjointed like that, if it's like two time frames they're jumping back and forth on and the characters are different, then that's fine. But it's when the characters are the same, but it's sort of flashbacks and it's disjointed. You're just like, what's happening?
Well, that brings up something that we really haven't talked about, the give and take between an ebook and a physical book. I have a sort of ingrained love for a physical book, the physical act of turning a page, holding it in my hand, seeing the cover, the being able to have it here, a physical visual portrait of some of the greatest loves of my life, and that can't be replaced. But that's a love of the heart. There's a different thing going on with ebooks because that logically is better. I mean, if you don't know the meaning of a word, you can highlight it and it'll tell you the meaning of it. You can highlight your favorite passages without feeling like you're defacing the book. You can search. You can follow the hyperlinks. You can bookmark different sections. You can highlight things in different colors so that the colors all mean different things. Yeah. You can go on vacation and take 30 books with you and only take up this much space.
I still prefer the actual book. If I'm not gonna have an audiobook, which is I prefer to have the audiobook, but if I can't have an audiobook, I'd rather have to be honest with you, I'd rather have a paperback than a hardback book, because I like the way the paperback bends in my hands.
Yeah, hardback.
And I like to run my fingers across the words when I'm reading them, which doesn't feel the same in an ebook. And I also like to pause by holding it with my fingers. You know what I'm saying? Like it just feels more real to me. And then plus I like to own the book. I like to have the book so that I can look at it and be like, oh, I remember when I read that book. All of that. If I had to choose between an ebook and a paperback and a hardback, I would choose a paperback for sure. And then probably a hardback, and then probably the ebook. Like the ebook is probably my least favorite way to read a book.
So I'm going to tell you a story right here.
Okay.
So I 100% was always a physical book reader, not an audio or ebook reader. So So when we moved from Hawaii, and I have a huge collection, okay? So we moved from Hawaii to the mainland. I mean, the number of book boxes that they had to ship over, it was intense. And then when I moved to Florida from California, okay, that was intense in itself. So when I got divorced and I got into small apartment living, I knew I could not bring all those books with me because they kept accumulating over time. And so I learned to do audio and ebooks and purchase only the ones I really, really, really want, that I've enjoyed, and I would actually go purchase them, the physical book.
Do you like it better though? Like, do you prefer?
I've learned for the past 3 years, and when I started really getting into ebooks is when I moved here to Georgia. I really have enjoyed it.
But is that your preference though? Like, if you had to choose,
it would be a book.
Yeah.
It would be a physical, and I'm a hardback person, so not a soft.
Because you can't really take your ebook to the beach. It'll get sand and wet and gross.
I can.
You can't take it in the tub either. You're too paranoid about taking it
in the tub.
I'm sorry, I do.
Well, like, I got this. It's fine.
You spend a lot of money on an ebook, so the idea of taking it in the tub with you, and if you drop it, you'd have to replace it. I'm just no.
Oh, you mean on the actual device? Like,
yeah. Also, that's why I feel like when I'm in my house and I'm not going anywhere, I feel like I need to wear the shittiest clothes I have because I should save my nice things. I need to get over that.
That's bullshit, April. You're probably one of those people that like saves the best spices for when you have company too.
Yeah.
Fuck that. No. You are the best company. You indulge yourself. It's taken me a long time to get there, but yes, you should definitely.
I'm working on it. On it. Whatever.
So I have to say, you can also do it on an iPad, and it's pretty cool too. You don't have to get an ebook. I mean, ebook gives you more.
Yeah, but I'm not going to take my iPad into the tub either.
I do.
Or your cell phone, so you can read on your cell phone. I have a Kindle.
I'm not taking anything that costs more than $20 into the tub with me. All right, Iris, I have a similar experience where I was going through like this thing because I was waiting for Madeline to graduate high school, and when she left, I was like, I'm gonna do minimalist. I don't need all this stuff. I was like, what do things really mean? It's all materialism, and I was just going through a thing. I call it the Great Book Purge of 2011. I got rid of easily 75% of my books.
That's a lot of books.
It's a lot of books. A lot of people came and took them because I posted them on the Coweta County, like it was like on Yahoo. I can't remember, it was a long time ago. But and they came and they got them. And there's like books from like Madeline's childhood that I miss, that I wish I still had. And so I will say that, yes, I did get rid of a lot of books. And now I have the same mentality. I will read the book, and then if I love it, I will put it on the shelf. But now, you know what I've started doing? I go on eBay for the books that I just can't get out of my heart, and I find the exact copy, and I buy it so that I can have it again. I need it back on my shelf.
So I just want to say that Rob has a bookshelf in the garage. I'm not getting rid of any of my books at all. No. My books are staying in the book nook.
Do you have the ability to add more shelves
to my book nook
so that he could be part of it?
He's got some stuff in the book nook,
but you have to approve it.
Yeah. For sure. Approval.
Well, I don't want you to answer this. This is for your consideration, not ours. I would divide it up by real estate.
Oh, he has a lot of real estate.
He definitely does. He has so much real estate that it requires a tour, even for the Bug Man.
Who loved it.
Yeah, I know.
I felt bad for that book man because he came in and he was like, oh, you guys like films? And I was like, oh, shit.
Oh, shit.
And then Rob was like, oh, my God, let me tell you about every single piece of art on the wall.
I feel like a lot of times on these episodes, I talk about people that I've known in the past. Christy Walker, who lives in Texas now. I loved that little lady so much. She was so funny. One time she hit a possum and killed the possum.
That's impossible.
And it was a mama possum. And the babies, however, did not die. And so she rescued the baby possums.
Mamas didn't play dead?
Because they play possum. That's a thing that they do. Oh my God, Iris. Is April, are you all right?
I want to listen. The point is that she brought some baby possums over to my house. We shared a love of. We had a musical kinship, and she drove this like 1982 station wagon that her grandparents gave her. And on the back rear bumper of that station wagon was a bumper sticker, and it just cracked me up so hard, and it still does. So just imagine this lovely, in the bloom of youth, 16-year-old girl in rural Georgia driving her grandparents' station wagon, and she was very, free spirit, hippie-ish kind of chick. Very cool, Christy Walker. And her bumper sticker says, "Let me tell you about my grandchildren."
So I feel like if we were listening to an audiobook, that story would be way better than if we were reading it in a book, because slow build up, slow punchline.
That makes a beautiful segue.
I'm just trying to get us back on track. That's
and
what's
you
happening
did,
there.
and you did, because it's almost like we planned it, but we did not. But that makes a beautiful segue, because you know what that's called?
What?
When someone tells a story that seemingly takes a very long time, and then it actually ends up being pretty anticlimactic. That is called a shaggy dog story. And that is
the name of a freaking cocktail. Like, why haven't we made a shaggy dog cocktail? Like, why is that not a thing? I would drink the shit out of a shaggy dog cocktail.
I should have thought of that for this episode.
I feel like next time.
I'll put a bookmark in that, and we will have a shaggy dog cocktail.
Also, we should have a cocktail called Put a Bookmark in It. Like, why aren't we making these cocktails? Like, what is
I hope you're writing these down, because they're genius. They're pure genius.
You know what's great about this? We're recording it.
Yeah.
I don't have to take notes.
It's
been recorded. Iris
Point
is
taken.
not amused.
Point taken. But the other point is, a shaggy dog story is a plot device wherein the tale is building and building and building and building, and then as a point of humor, it goes wah, 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 and then you're sort of let down. And what's so funny is that it got you excited and got you into it. I've told a lot of 15-minute jokes that had just such an effect.
Okay.
So speaking of plot devices, and story mechanisms, what are some of your favorite plot devices?
I want to say that I enjoy any book that has puns in them. So at any time,
can you give an example?
If a character or a group of characters or something happens in the book that's very punny, I am 100% on board. Kevin Hearn has a book series that has a lot of puns in it. Puns are quite common. I feel like it comes up all the time in books. Yeah, in fact, Christopher Paolini in what we were talking about earlier with the Stars book. What is that called? The
Paolini. His name is Christopher Paolini.
Christopher Paolini. When he wrote that book, like
Aragon.
Not
the
Aragon.
Dragon.
I never read Aragon. I saw the movie with Sean Connery. It was horrible. But I did.
The movie, but the book was really good, and he wrote it when he was like 15 or something.
I did read the book To Sleep in a Sea of Stars. He uses a lot of puns in that book, sporadically and sporadically. Sporadically is the word I was looking for. He uses a lot of puns sporadically, and I feel like that is a quick change of pace. Like, it wasn't expected. It doesn't need to be there. It was not necessary. In fact, he even mentions at the end of the book in his little author's note, which we talked about earlier, that they asked him to take the puns out. And he was like, no, I'm not taking the puns out. And I say thank you, Christopher Paolini, for not taking the puns out, because puns out Comes out. Do it.
Would you
No.
say he just really stuck to his puns?
He stuck to his puns. That's what I would say. And that is a fantastic way to say it, in fact. That's what I like that. That amuses me. Like humor in any way. And no matter what the story is, there's always room for a joke. There's always room for a little bit of a humor where you can laugh at the character, but not like such a way that you feel embarrassed for the character, but like a little giggle.
You like a little wink, a little nod.
Like a little nod, like a little I mean, this is serious shit we're talking about, but don't take it too seriously. You know?
Well,
like,
and I feel the same way, but you put that in the way that manifests for you as a pun.
Mm-hmm.
I just like really irreverent humor.
Yeah, I mean, we explored this a little bit in the LOL episode.
Right.
So Iris was not here for the LOL episode, so we didn't get to hear about her takes on humor. So now would be a good time, Iris, for you to tell us.
There are very few stories that I like it as a main theme. But I do like it when every so often they have a character that brings the humor into the story. It's just it's not the main force of the of the outline of the story. So an example is like Piers Anthony's books on the
punter. He's a punter.
Yes,
Piers
he
Anthony.
is. So his world of Xanth it's purely and the way he wrote it made sense. So having the world in that's like he had his brain fall out and it went on the street in the gutter, and so he had a dirty mind after that from that point forward. I mean, that made total sense. You know what I mean? So I that's fine, and that whole series is fine, but I cannot. When you're trying to, what was it on the book club that we read on the superheroes, where everything
Steelheart.
No, she was trying. She worked for an organization, and you had all this.
I'm not even in the book club. I don't know.
She was in the organization. Out of the blue, she was looking for a job, and then this person came through her wall and hired her for this job, and she ended up being this like amazing assistant, and there was so much humor and comedy.
I remember that one. That was like
Actually, it was pretty good, but as a series, it would fail. I couldn't do it past that one book.
Well, I mean, it was funny though.
Well,
what was interesting about that book series is how absurd the world was, right? Like she and all the it was like a superhero world, and they were like superheroes for hire, and they were like an organization.
Exactly.
So but it's sort of tongue in cheek though. Like the whole book was kind of tongue in cheek. Yeah.
So that's a tongue in cheek. You have another one that's pun, and then another one which is more satire humor, which is the one with the unicorn.
Oh my God, I love that book. We talk about this every time. The heart.
I couldn't stop laughing. That was.
Is this
book.
the Michael Kramer?
Yes.
No, but yes. Yes, that's that book. That I make everybody.
A dragon struck.
A lightning struck heart.
Lightning struck heart.
Is that one?
I've not even read it, but that's what's ingrained in me. It's a dragon struck heart written by Michael Kramer.
Was it Andrea Vernon and the ultra human?
Yes, that one.
Wait.
Okay, so I'm
Thank you for reminding me why I'm not part of this book club.
Keep it down, Bruce Lee. It's
we're cutting that one out, you know that.
Andrea Vernon and the Ultra Human Protection.
Correct.
I think that's that one.
So
yeah,
I found after reading those 3 types of humor books, my favorite is satirical humor. David Sedaris and those type of. I mean, his is more real life satire, but I'm talking about anything humorous, but with a tone of satire in it. I love.
Yeah, I'm with you. Actually, I love humor, but I don't want to read a book that's written just to be funny. Right. I want to read a book that has a story that has humor in it. Like I want that to be sort of a highlight where there's humor, but it just shouldn't be all about humor.
I also have no tolerance for mean-spirited humor.
Same.
Okay.
Same. Don't be mean. I don't think that being mean is funny. And I like self-deprecating humor for that reason. Definitely punching up rather than punching down for sure.
Well, and the same, but I feel like sometimes my sense of humor comes across as mean. I don't know, you ladies may know that I get super competitive with board games.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'll be like super aggressive to be funny.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes people feel like that's directed at them. Like I'm funny, but I'm really targeting them. And it's the opposite. It's funny, but I'm targeting myself. What I'm making fun of is the fact that I take it so seriously.
Some of us have a little PTSD, though, with regard to overly competitive people in board games. In fact, I can't play Uno because fuck that fucking game. Sorry.
You have no friends in Uno.
Fucking hate Uno for that very reason. Like I can't handle it. So also, I feel the same way about sadness, about crying in books. Like if you're making me cry because it's so beautiful, I love that. I love to cry because it's so beautiful. Nothing makes me happier than to be like full on blubbering because it's so beautiful. But if you make me cry because it's so sad, then I'm like, fuck you, you fucking fuck. Like that's terrible. Why would you do that to that goddamn character? Stupid. Oh my God. Like I get so mad. Like there's a difference. Like I love to cry, but I want to cry because I'm touched. You know what I mean? I don't want to cry because it's so horrible and I just don't want to, and I don't want to throw the book across the room, but I can't because it's an audiobook and I love my phone. Like I don't.
Do you take your phone in the tub?
So the great thing about audiobooks is the phone doesn't have to be in the tub. I can put the phone on the toilet paper rack far away from the water and let it play.
We'll put that on the scoreboard.
Yeah.
I don't mind crying over sadness and not just beauty, but the sadness needs to have served a purpose.
Yeah.
Other than making me cry.
Characters there needs to be growth.
Yes.
Someone needs to be better off at the end of the story than at the beginning of the story. If they're not, then why have you told me this goddamn story? Like, what's the point of that?
And I hate it when people are like, oh, but that's realism. No, I don't read books for realism. I get that in real life. I read books to escape that shit.
Yes, 100% yes. It doesn't need to be, like, I know the world sucks. I know that people suck. I know that the world is against me and that everything
and things
sucks.
Rarely work out the way that you want them to, and that the good guy always loses and the bad guy usually wins. There's no just desserts.
Yeah, in a story, right. I need there to be more.
Right. We should transcend.
And the good guys should persevere.
And if they can't feel bad about what they've done, they can only celebrate the badness that they've done, then they die.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I love a redemption arc as well. Like, that's
the best thing in the world. But if you can't have a redemption arc, but if that doesn't happen, then they die. I just want everyone to get what they deserve.
Yeah. I mean, I don't need them to die, but I would prefer them to be removed from society in some way.
I would love to just be able to put them in a corner and think about what you've done, and they come out and they're like, that was fucked up, I'm sorry, and
they have a redemption arc in the corner,
and that would be great. But for the people that can't happen, I don't need them to like be tortured. I don't need them to have to write an essay or write their name on the board 50 times. Nice, quiet, they die in their sleep. I'm fine with it. Let's get back to plot devices, because one of the things that I hate in a book is resurrection. Okay? When someone dies, I need to be able to trust that they're dead, good or bad. Okay? Because if they're bad, because it's so overused with the person coming back to life, I can't fully relax. But by the same token, if they're good, I can't fully grieve.
Here's what I want to say about that too. Another thing that happens in books sometimes is like, let me just reference like John dies at the end. And I'm going to spoil this, and I don't give a fuck. The book is way fucking old. You should have read it a long time ago. Anyway, here's what I'm saying. In John dies at the end, the character, he dies. The one that I'm attached to, the one that I care about, dies. So what? There's a fucking copy of him that now proceeds. The copy is not the dude. The copy, I repeat this, the copy is not the character I care about. He is a fucking copy. I care about the character. So what? You copied him. He's not the same character. Like, I feel like literature, television shows, movies, they don't fucking get this. They think that if I see the actor or I see the character,
they want you to take the blue pill,
and they have the memories that they're the character. They're not the fucking character. The character is dead. And it's no service to me or to anyone that loves that character that there's now a copy of that character that lives. I don't like it.
Spin them back up. You can't spin them back up.
The character is dead. Do not give me some facsimile. Except for in the Bobaverse. In the Bobaverse, it's fine.
Yes, agreed.
I'm not gonna. All of those rants do not apply to the Bobaverse. The Bobaverse is really fun.
Yeah, I know. That's
at the end of the day, it just comes down to characters and characters doing weird, random things and behaving strangely and having joy.
They
I
also
think she would enjoy it. I think she would enjoy it. I think.
Are there any mistreated, unappreciated, abused, minimized robots?
Not in the Bobaverse. Well, I mean, maybe. No, not really, because Bob is Bob.
Bob himself, yes.
And the Bobaverse is fine.
Don't say anymore, because that will destroy.
I hate it when I've been spoiled.
All right. Well, give it to me, and I will, if it's on Hoopla or Libby, I will partake.
I don't know. I think I read it.
I have it on ebook, sorry.
All right, so let's get back to plot devices that we love. And I would say that I deeply love unreliable narrators.
On your own.
Really?
I don't like an unreliable narrator. I want to trust somebody. Somebody give me somebody to trust. No. I don't like it when the narrator lies to me.
She's not, or he is not lying to you.
They're
just presenting, they're presenting the facts as they know them. And it just underscores the fact that to every story, there is another story.
So are you saying unreliable narrator and the fact that the narrator knows more information than they're sharing with me? Or the narrator is sharing the information with me and then later they discover new things that are twisty? Because I'm okay with the narrator like thinking one thing and then all of a sudden realizing something else and being like, hey, FYI, this is a new change. This has happened. Like, you're experiencing the story with me. Like, that's okay with me. But like when the narrator knows shit and they don't tell me because they're stingy with information, I'm out.
Okay, I'm with you. If they're like deliberately trying to deceive us to like fuck with us, then yeah, fuck them. But if they're just, they're skewed, their perception is skewed. You know, they're telling you their story. And that's what I love about it, is because how many times have you said something to someone and they've taken it wrong?
All the time.
All the time. And that's what's beautiful about an unreliable narrator. It forces you to sort of consider what you may consider to be an innocuous exchange. But it's not. That person went home and thought about that shit.
God, stop doing that. Stop going home and thinking about shit that I say. FYI. Never do that.
Here's an interesting question. When you're trying to sleep and you're replaying things in your head like we do, do you more often replay things that other people said to you and try to figure them out, or do you replay things you said and figure out, I hope they took that the right way, or did I not? You know, what do you question more, your performance or theirs?
100% it's my performance.
Same.
Like, it's like if I've said something, and if I've said something that later I think, oh God, that probably was really mean, or that probably was really fucked up, or why the hell would I behave that way? And I never explained to that person, then I will relive that many times. Here's what I do, because you guys know that sleeping is my superpower. I can fall asleep at any time. What I do is I write that down and say, later, I want you to think about what you've done. And then I task it. I give myself 10 minutes to think about it later. And then I'm like, you know what, I'm going to think about that later. And then I do think about that later. But then I can sleep through the rest of the night. Quick tip from Michele. Just schedule in your worries and you're fine.
If I was a scientist, I would do a whole study on what people think about when they are trying to fall asleep.
I feel like you would probably, I think we all think about the same shit.
No, I don't feel like we do.
Okay, but back on track.
What point of view do you like?
My favorite is first person just because that comes across the best in an audiobook. In an audiobook, the best narrative is the first person, and that's because I only get one point of view and perspective to the entire book. Some books and some narrators really suck at first person omniscient or third person, or like switching narratives from one person to another, because they can't carry it. Even narrators that I love, like Nathan Fillion, for example, cannot pull off multiple first person narratives, but needs one narrative through the whole thing for me. Right? So okay. I like it when I get one person's perspective from the beginning to the end of the story, and then with them, and I care about them, and what happens to them matters, and that things that happen to them affect me. So like I sort of become that character, and I enjoy that. I don't like it necessarily when there are multiple perspectives, or when and if there are multiple perspectives, I need there to be multiple narrators. But like when there are multiple perspectives, or when there's a third person perspective, and second person I've only seen really done well one time, which of course is Remington.
You read Tim Robbins, right?
Well, I read Still Life with Woodpecker.
So Half Asleep in Frog Pajamas, that was also second person.
I didn't read that one.
Put it on your list.
But I feel like Tim Robbins could probably pull it off because he's a genius.
Yeah, he is.
All right. He's funny. I like funny. Funny works for me.
Iris, what about you?
Okay, so let me put it this way. I do enjoy first person, but I know it's going to be depressing, but I do still enjoy someone who experienced the events and they tell the story as they experience it, and the hero is not the main voice in the story. It's the person who was part of that experience, who saw this person, what they went through and everything, and they told that story. I guess that would be second. I love those. There are very few books that can do it, but there are.
So you're saying like first person narrative, but not the primary person in the story. So like someone who's watching someone else do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, it's not as much fun as the first person because I like to hear the psychological nonsense, like what you're thinking, what's happening, but that's cool too.
But most of the time, the reason that's happening is because something's happened to the main person, the driving force of the story. But because they affected the outcome and what happened to them, I enjoyed it.
So anything can happen, right? So like if it's a second person, first person narrative, the first person, that the hero can die. Yeah, you don't know.
Exactly.
Maybe not. You don't know. Right. I get it. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, it's not cool. I don't like it when the hero dies, but I get what you're saying.
He could.
I get what you're saying.
So, yeah, there's been like a set of stories that I've read over the last few years where someone's story is told not from their perspective, but from the people who knew them. And Bernadette, we all obviously read, but there was another one that was called The Life and Death of Sophie Stark. And I think that's and that wasn't even the best example. But the point is that I do like that mechanism of telling a story. I mean,
so are you saying like how did you go, Bernadette, that the mechanism was like in a series of like faxes and letters?
Yeah, it was definitely the story of her, but it was told through the detritus of her life in life.
It's funny that you say detritus because I associate that word heavily with sci-fi, and you don't read a lot of sci-fi, so that's weird. I don't know why I associate that word sci-fi. But it seems like in sci-fi, like that's the name of ships, and that's the name of like things that are left behind in space, like the detritus.
Yeah, I think it also shows that it's a real word.
I mean, it is a I mean, for sure, it's a real word, but like it's a word that means trash. Yeah. Right? Which you wouldn't think that you would use in the respect that you would. It means things that are left behind after, like
not necessarily trash. It's the things that are left behind.
Right.
And there's like another word for it too, but I can't think of it right now. But it's like you can buy it on eBay, and it's called. It starts with an E.
And it's with a bay.
No, it's like it's not euphemism, but it's epheria or something like that, where you can buy just the remnants of
remnants. That's a good word.
There's a certain type of storytelling but it's not the main character. Okay, so the story is told. There's a central character, but it's not the central character who's telling the story. The story is slowly and almost through a prism, because it's different perspectives, told about this person from people who knew her, and they all knew a different piece of him or her. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I find that really interesting, because if you took 5 people who have known you in your life, but at different periods, they would all have a different story to tell. And that's what I love also about the unreliable narrator, is that people are more than just one perspective. All right, so that's my favorite, is
unreliable narrator.
Unreliable narrator, and also the central character's story being told from alternate sources instead of them telling their own story.
Okay.
What are some things that you hate or feel like are cheap shots and overused?
I think sometimes they're like intentional plot twists. Like sometimes I think people use plot twists or authors use plot twists just for the sake of the plot twist. You know what I mean? Like where you're like, oh, okay, now it's different. Like I feel like they did that on purpose. Like they wrote the whole novel just for this plot twist. And that feels to me sometimes, not every time, but sometimes like, what, you trying to get one by me? Like, that's not cool.
Not
I
cool.
trusted you. I was there for you. Like, who you are, James Joyce?
And now you're just going to
fucking weird, like, you can't understand me all of a sudden nonsense. Like, I don't like that. Like, I want to be, like, in on the joke from the get. And then, like, all of a sudden I'm not on the joke. Like, it's fine occasionally as a surprise.
They're pulling the eject button, the evacuate button, right?
Yeah.
You're like, I've been on this ride with you the whole time, and now you're going to bail and do something cheap and dirty?
Sometimes I'm like, no, that's not the twist that I was looking for. No. Like, I was in. You had me at the get. And now I'm in the air.
Now I'm
unable to breathe.
Suddenly we're strangers?
Right. Like, why would you do that? Don't you love me? Aren't I your audience?
They were using you. They lured you in under false pretenses, made you feel like it was real, like you had something real.
Yeah.
And then you find out, nope.
No.
You were nothing but fodder
for
the deeper plan.
For their freaking plot nonsense. Sometimes, though.
Bullshit.
So what's weird about that is that sometimes I love it. Sometimes I'm like, I figured that out 2 seconds before you told me. I love it. But sometimes I hate it. It just depends on I don't know. Maybe it depends on if I've seen that move before.
The approach, yeah.
If I've seen that move before and then you show me the move again, I'm like, fuck you. That's an old move. No. It's like a line at a bar, right? Like, no, I've heard that line. But if you haven't heard that line, like the first time, you're like, oh, that's an interesting line. It's sort of a double-edged sword, but I think that it's a risky proposition, and sometimes I hate it. Sometimes I'm out. You know,
we could sort of go back to like a love-hate thing, right? Because like you're saying, you know, sometimes you love it and sometimes you hate it. And there are things that sometimes I love and sometimes I hate. Like, okay,
I love a pun every time. FYI.
Noted. Let the record show.
Let the record reflect.
I hate stories of star-crossed lovers, right?
Right, yes.
But
no.
I love stories of the odd couple, like they're so different, but somehow they're just drawn to each other. I love those stories.
So I think that the difference really is the whole, and I feel this way about
Pride and Prejudice is star-crossed lovers. Sorry, no.
like if it's
No,
if
they're
it's
not
one of those
star-crossed.
things where like if they fall in love it's dangerous. I don't like that. I don't like the danger.
Right.
I don't like
Right.
danger love. But unexpected love I'm down with. Like if it's unexpected but it's acceptable for society. So like nothing bad is gonna happen to them if they fall in love. But are they gonna fall in love? Like that's weird that they fall in love. Like that's a different vibe.
Exactly.
It's a different vibe.
Exactly. It's not doomed, right?
Right.
Nothing bad is going to
Not
happen.
Romeo
It's not
and
dangerous.
Juliet.
It's that they're going to be out of their comfort zones and learn how to be better people.
Yeah. No, I think.
Okay, good. So I'm going to look at this is the definition of star-crossed lovers.
Oh. Iris is getting all Wikipedia on us.
It's phrase that describing a pair of lovers whose relationship is thwarted by outside forces. Yeah,
yes.
That's Pride and Prejudice. Okay.
So outside forces is a different issue. Like I feel this way about a lot of like gay romances, right? Like sometimes it's a difference between what was that gay romance that you, or the boy on boy romance that you recommended to me, April?
Oh,
Being in love is bad, right? Versus like a TJ Klune where it's fine, but unexpected.
A Gentleman's Guide to Being Virtuous.
A Gentleman's Guide to Virtue, right? So like that one where like it was painful because if they were in love, it could mean their death. It could mean their death.
Okay,
it could mean death and dismemberment and jail time and ruin and destruction and a horrible things will happen when they fall in love. Like I hate that shit because it hurts me and it bothers me and it stresses me out and my shoulders get tense and I'm worried about them and I want them to feel their feelings. But at the same point, I'm like, no, don't feel your feelings. Like it's hard. It's hard, conflicted.
So can I ask a question? So star-crossed lovers it always ends in tragedy?
Like Romeo and Juliet, right? Like if they get together, it's bad. It's so fucking bad because like war will happen and shit, right?
Right.
Versus more like
a plague upon their houses.
More like a Jane Austen thing where if Darcy and Elizabeth get together, people are just like, well, I don't know. And I think that's very bad. And perhaps Darcy will not get the income that he deserves because of this nonsense.
I think it's more than that.
He married beneath her.
Beneath him, I say. Beneath him.
No, it's more than that.
It's sort of a different vibe. Like the stakes are lower in some respect. Like I think that the difference between star-crossed lovers and unlikely lovers is the stake.
Right.
I don't like it.
I think the sweetest example I can think of just that is Eleanor and Park by Rainbow Rowell. Oh, it's so adorable. It's a teen, they're teens, but they ride the same bus, and I'm not even going to give it away. You just need to read it. It is short. It'll take you like a day, and it's the perfect example of they're not star-crossed. They're just, you just never would put them together. They're misfits. I like a good odd couple story, but I don't like star-crossed. Also, like we just talked about, I love a good coming-of-age story. Mm-hmm. Not such a fan of a midlife crisis.
See, I'm the opposite. I love a midlife crisis, but I hate a coming-of-age.
I enjoy both.
Well, we're going to have to rely on our listeners to break this Mexican standoff.
Wow, it is legit. We're all varying in this respect, which is fantastic. I love that.
So are there any other loves and hates of typical plot devices that y'all wanted to discuss?
I don't like where it always comes out that the hero gets caught by the villain and he's got to figure his way out. That's just a typical plot, or a mystery plot where the person it ends up always being a butler type person that did it.
Yeah.
Right.
So you don't
You know
like
what I
a
hate?
stereotypical ending to a mystery novel.
Yeah.
I hate it when there's a girl in the story who's pretty, but she doesn't know that she's pretty.
Oh God, yeah, right.
Why can't she know that she's pretty and just think it's not that important?
Right?
That's what
Yeah.
I would like. I also hate it, and I feel like this is probably super overdone too. Well, maybe it's not that overdone. It's just really stuck with me because I don't understand this behavior. People who burn letters without reading them. Who does
Fuck is
that?
those people? I'm 100% behind you. Like people
Who
who burn
does that?
letters or who don't open gifts.
Right, or listen to the voice message or the answering machine message. They just delete. No, who does that?
Those fuckers.
How do you? Yeah, I don't get. I feel like there's no one on earth that would do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think those people exist.
You may burn it after you read it and
they're
pretend you never
assholes.
read it.
Right? Burn after reading. Delete. I agree. Like that. Why? Like let things pass. I also
The curiosity would kill you for the rest of your life.
I hate that whole Shakespearean thing where like if they just heard this thing before this thing happened, then this thing would never happen, then this thing would never happen, and then blah blah. Like I feel like I hate that. That's a very Shakespearean sort of.
Like the flap of a butterfly wing will somehow change the fate of.
No, I mean it's more than like if only they'd known that Romeo was not actually poisoned, but really just asleep.
Yes. We've talked
Juliet
about
would never have killed herself, and then Romeo would never have killed himself. Like I hate that shit. Like just
we've talked about that before. It was like if they had just like went around the corner like 10 seconds earlier.
I don't like it. Like I understand that as a plot device and that it's necessary to like move things forward. Especially
to build
as an ending. Like why? Why would you do that? Like why don't you want the characters to be happy? Like what's wrong with you that you don't want your characters to be happy?
Don't you love them? We love them. Why don't you love them?
Right. Like haven't you spent like
you
hours and
them.
hours and hours and years creating these characters just so they
and
can
you don't
end?
love them?
That's
You're bad parents.
shitty. Yes, bad parents. Like I don't understand that. And that goes back to like the whole concept of no one is better off at the end.
I hate that.
Like for me, like at the end of a story, one of two things needs to happen. Either I need to be better off because you taught me some sort of lesson, which A, never fucking happens, and B, never fucking happens, or C, the characters are better off at the end of the story. Like those are the things that need to happen. Either the characters need to be better off or I need to be better off. Otherwise, why tell me the story? You know what I mean?
I'm with you. That's the whole thing. We get enough of that shit in real life. I don't need you to teach me that bad shit happens. I already know that.
Either entertain me
or let me go.
Or somehow make things better for these people that you've made me care about. Like, that's it. That's it. That's all there is.
All right, well, let's get to the bookend.
Oh, the bookend.
All right, so for the bookend, I have two options because we're all pretty drunk now. I know this because Michelle's doing duck lips, and I've never seen her do that before.
Duck lips. I think it's because I'm wearing lipstick.
Okay, so we have two options.
Okay.
Option one is I can give you examples of known legit terms for plot devices. And if you can think of an example of you know what, we'll make it easy. We'll say book or movie that utilizes that plot device. You get a point.
Can we add television show?
Yeah, television would work. I'll give you a description of the plot device, and you get 1 point if you can name the plot device. If you can't name the plot device, that's okay. You can just name an example from TVs, movies, or books. Or I can give you an example of a plot device, and then you have to write me a story using that plot device.
I'm not writing any fucking stories, so let's go with option A.
All right, so let's go. All right, so let me say.
Unless Iris can weigh in. What are you going to weigh in, Iris?
No, I'm not a writer.
She's not writing any fucking stories either.
She also said she wasn't a narrator, but she did a really good job on that on one of the other episodes.
I mean, I feel like that's true about Iris. I think she
underestimates
herself.
Yeah, she did such a good job when she was doing her.
She was naive.
She was naive, and the coming of age story, and she did such a good job on that.
For sure she did.
I guess her character's like 5 seconds into them.
She legit like practiced that shit and stuff.
Oh, yeah. She probably got a coach. She had a trainer.
Think she had a trainer?
She probably went to improv class.
Did you take an improv class, Iris?
Just being here with you guys is enough.
Oh, she's being coy
Okay, so this is a plot device where the beginning of the story and the end of the story mirrors each other.
The end and the beginning of the story mirror each other? What do you want from me here? Like an example?
No, what is that called?
What is that called? Can I Google it?
No. Okay, Google it.
That
makes for entertaining podcasting.
I'm a pretty good goddamn Googler.
Really?
Beginning.
Iris is like, that's my jam, yo.
Of the story mirrors. Whoops, hang on.
But just think about it. Think about, the beginning of the story that sets in place, and then it tells the story, and then you're back where you started.
What is it called?
It's called framing.
Framing?
Yeah. All right. That was okay. All right. That was to get us warmed up. Okay. Are you ready?
I feel like I am successfully heated.
What do you call it
Mm-hmm.
when there is something in the story that is supposed to be super important and it moves the story forward, but in actuality, it's completely insignificant and has no greater meaning?
Stephen King describing a table in great detail from many pages.
I thought that was a whatever.
A MacGuffin.
A MacGuffin?
You're right. It was a MacGuffin. And that came from Hitchcock.
Also, I feel like Iris completely Googled.
No, actually I did not, because that's one of the things I do not like.
You don't like Googling?
No, whatever.
A MacGuffin? So what example of a MacGuffin do you not like?
A good one would be Pulp Fiction, where they're trying to find the suitcase, and it ends up not being even relevant in the plot. It just the suitcase becomes this thing on where all these stories converge on, and it doesn't become the main story, actually.
So according to Google, a MacGuffin is an example of a statue of the Falcon in the 1929
Maltese Falcon.
That's what Google says.
Like Pulp Fiction would be one. I mean, I did enjoy it.
Yeah, but I feel like that's an obvious one.
Okay.
Well, isn't a MacGuffin an obvious thing?
Yeah, but I just feel like everybody's seen Pulp Fiction.
So it's a good example then?
Yeah, I guess it's a good example. Okay, so your next plot device is where the resolution of the story is brought upon by something that shows up out of nowhere and really doesn't make any sense.
I fucking hate that shit.
What repeat that again?
Things that annoy Michele 4,000.
It's when the story tension is broken and resolved by something that just sort of pops out of nowhere and doesn't surprises everybody and there's been no build up to it. It just shows up and solves everything.
I'm Googling it if you can hear me typing.
That's where we are in this podcast. For the bookend, we Google the answer.
Because I don't know the answer.
Because if you didn't, this would be where I inserted the crickets.
So April, when I Googled what do you call things that resolve tension, that's something out of nowhere.
And what came up?
The answer is paranoia.
These are my own definitions, okay? You're not going to find these in a literature.
Cognitive dissonance is another quick example that comes up, which is a big fun thing that I like to talk about, is cognitive dissonance. But I don't think that either of those things, paranoia or cognitive dissonance, are what you're talking about.
The answer I was looking for was Deus ex machina, which literally translates into God of machine.
Okay. So at this point,
that's like you know what I think of? I think of like Edgar Allan Poe.
Tale of the Heart?
No, The Pit and the Pendulum. the shit's building, he's about to die, and then fucking out of nowhere, some Spanish soldier dude shows up and saves him.
Yeah.
And no one expects the Spanish
that's the beauty
soldier
of it.
or the
No one expects the Spanish soldier.
But the thing about it, that's what his point was. Some things in life, it's just something that's simple, man.
Right. Okay. Next plot device. This happens when there's a goal, and the goal has to happen, but there's sort of a deadline, and you're limited because you can't just take all day to do it. You're in a...
Is it that one movie like...
You're in a race
against...
Oh, there's a lot of books like that.
Race against time.
A race against time?
Yeah. So can you think of an example of a book or a movie or a TV show?
I feel like I could think of all these examples if we just took a pause and I went to the restroom.
This is what happens. I'm going to do 3 more, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Okay.
This is what happens when part of the story is told, and it seems to be casual, but it's actually preparing you for things that will come later.
Can you repeat that again?
Leaving you in a motherfucking place, which I hate.
Well, it's just when you
I hate
look
to be left
back,
in a place. There's nothing worse than being left in a place.
No. It's not leaving you in a place. We're going to do that one next. It's when you finish the book and you look back or you do a reread, you're like, oh, why didn't I figure this out sooner? It was so obvious because of this. If only I had realized the significance of this.
Of a plot.
Yes, it's when something is actually predicting what may come later.
Foreshadowing.
Foreshadowing. Oh my God. Yeah.
Can you think of an example?
No, because I have to pee super bad.
Okay, last one, and then we're going to wrap it up. This is when a story leaves you in a place.
I fucking hate that shit.
And it happens more often now because there's series and they want you to read the next book. And it is called By the Fingernails, and I'm dangling over a precipice.
Cliffhanger. Motherfucking cliffhangers.
And we will not leave you in a cliffhanger this episode. Michele will get to go to the restroom as soon as this episode ends.
Jesus
but
Christ.
Until then,
read the book, motherfucker. Fuckers. Eat the books, motherfucker.
Eat the book.
Eat
motherfucker.
Okay.
All right.
Y'all
I'm going to be right
way
back.
more emphatic than I expected. Let's go pee. We're stopping the recording. Stopping the recording.
Oh, my God. Stop the recording. Stop the recording.